All right, so what we're going to do now in this week, this class, is we're going to basically make it so that when our player dies, or we can have the player die right now, and also win, right? Because it's not really a game because we have the primary game mechanic, right? We can jump, and there's platforms that we jump on, so that's great. But what we don't have are a way of winning and or losing. Okay, so that's what we're going to basically do today, and these should be simpler, I think, in some ways than what we've done previously. Okay, so that being said, let's get to it. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to make two scripts. We're going to make one that's for death and one that's for victory. What I'm going to do is this. Let's go ahead and we'll create the death first. So we're going to right-click in here. I will open up my script folder, create C# script, and I just like to call this just death box script because basically I'm going to use this wherever I want the player to die on. So if there's some sort of like spikes or projectile or something that when the player touches it, they'll die, that's going to be attached to this script. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open this script up. I'm just going to double-click on it. It should open up right in here. Yours should hopefully as well. And we are going to write out this script. Okay, so what we are going to do is this. I'm going to get rid of this start here. I don't need that. This script's actually going to do just one very simple thing. I'm going to take this out as well because this is going to be all based off of a trigger. So instead of update, I'm going to do on trigger enter 2D. We're going to use this script is going to be attached to just an empty object that has a trigger attached to it, right? That'll have a box collider that has the trigger turned on as the option. Okay, so void on trigger enter, that'll be my function, and then we just have to write the same thing we always do, collider 2D, and then we'll call it COL. All right. Now what we want to do is we don't want to kill everything. We only want to kill the player, right? So we're going to test that the thing we're hitting is indeed the player. So to do that, I'm just going to say if col.tag, we're going to test the tag, equals quotes player. So if the tag of the thing we hit is player, I want you to do what's inside these quotes. Okay. So just I want to do this too, just so you recognize this. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to click on the player here. Okay. And you see currently it's untagged. There's already a built-in one called player, so we're just going to go ahead and choose player. That's where we're getting the tag from. That's right here, okay? Good. All right, so now we're going to save this, Control S. This isn't going to do anything yet because right now we can actually, let's do this just for the fun of it. Do debug.log, parentheses, then quote, you dead, okay? Like that. And then we'll just do semicolon. So debug.log, what that does is it will write a message to the console and say whatever you put in these quotes, right? And it doesn't have to be quotes. Like I'm just gonna say you dead, but you could put like the transform or whatever. You could put stuff in there. This is super handy. We're gonna use this a lot when you're trying to problem solve if something's not working. That's what this is for. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and save that, and I'm gonna go back to this. I'm gonna give it a second because it's got to compile. Although we're not really doing an awful lot, but. Once that's good, okay, I'm going to back up, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create an empty, and we'll just call this fall death, because this will be our fall death. I'm going to add a component, physics 2D, box collider 2D, make sure it's a trigger, and I'm just going to zero this all out. It doesn't really matter that much, I just want to zero out the transforms, and then I'm going to click on edit collider, and then I'm going to grab this, pull this down, I'm going to pull this part down, go like this, and go like this. What I need to do is make sure that this collider is far enough that my player will always fall in it. Like I don't want to be able to have the player jump off and get past it because then, he won't die and that will be lame. There's other ways of doing this too, but this is just the simplest way before we start. So now I'll click on this. Good. So we have the box collider. I made it a trigger. Now we're going to go ahead and throw our death box script on it. Okay. So I'm just going to click and drag that here, and now it's got death box script. I'll click on console, and let's hit play, and then we're going to look to see if it says you dead when my player falls into it, just to make sure it's working. So ready, and you dead. Beautiful. I know it's spelled wrong. I did that on purpose. All right. Before anybody thinks I'm, Anyway, so good. So that works. Now, what I want to do for this is I want to keep track of how many times the player dies. I want to give them 3 lives, and then on the third one they'll be dead. But every time that they die, I want them to restart at the beginning. Okay, that's how we're gonna set this up. So the best way to do that is I'm not going to actually attach it to this death box script. Instead, I'm going to make something. I'm going to make a function in my player controller script, which eventually will move out of there. But for right now, we're going to put in player controller script, and that way we can have any number of things kill us, and all of those different things don't have to have that same bit in there. They'll just call the death script. So I can have multiple things trying to kill me, not just the one. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go to Project tab now, and I want to open up Player Controller Script. Just double click on that, and we're going to add a custom function in here. So we're going to go boom, boom, and we're going to call void, and that just means that we're not returning any values, and it's going to be public. Has to be public so that other functions and other things can have access to it, and we're going to call it player death. And then parentheses like that. Okay, actually let's take the space out of there. There we go. And then after that, it's going to be braces. Like a so. So void, public. Oh, I'm sorry, I did that backwards. Why did I write? Sorry, it should be public void player death. Like that. I don't know why I wrote void first. I guess I was just writing the function. Okay, so now what we're going to do is this. We're just going to, in here, I want to reset the position of the player. So the easiest way of doing that is to actually just store it right from the get-go. So I'm going to make a variable up here. We'll put it right by this. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a private. I need to store its X and Y position. So we're going to do a private vector2. And it's going to be, we'll call it player start position. Okay, so basically it's just an XY. It'll this variable hold an XY. So then on start here, I'm going to go ahead and store that into this variable, this player start. So we're going to do player start position, and we're going to set it equal to the transform dot position. Okay, now just so you get an idea, the way we're getting that is that if I look at player, here's transform, and there's position. So if I do player, or if I do transform, because this is attached to it, and then dot position, it's going to give me these numbers. So it's transform dot position, like so. And that will store my X and Y into this. So wherever my player is first starting, because this will only run when the game first starts, it's going to go ahead and it's going to say, where are you? Put that as player start position. Now I'm going to use that number that every time I die, I'm going to put the player back where this is, which is where we started. Okay. So we're just going to say transform. So basically, if this gets called, it's just going to run transform dot position, the position of our player. We're going to set it equal to the player start position. Player start position semicolon. Okay. So we're going to set our current position to the player start position, which is what we stored when we very first started the game. Go ahead and save that. And if we go here, and the nice thing is too, I could hard code it and be like, oh, it should always reset at negative 1.3 and negative 2.37. But by doing it this way, I can move this player wherever, and that will automatically store that as the start position. So now, if I play, oh, actually nothing's going to happen, sorry. So we have that function, but nothing is calling it, right? It just says public void player death. It doesn't actually do anything. There's nothing calling it, right? These get called automatically. This gets called at the start of the frame. This gets called on every rendered frame. This one, there's nothing calling it because it's a custom one. So we're going to use this. Instead of saying you dead, we're going to call that function. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to, so basically if the thing we hit is the player, I can go ahead and use that to get to that function. So I'm going to say col dot game object. I want to get to the game object of it, so I'm like moving up in a way. Then we're going to say dot get component, and the component I want to get is this player controller script. Player controller script, okay, like that, and that's actually a method. I don't know why 0 got put in there. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to call the player death function inside of that, like so. So what it's going to do is say, okay, if the collider that I hit, if it's tagged as player, which I showed you that earlier, it's going to go ahead and say, okay, the collider that I hit, go to its game object. Now in its game object, grab the component player controller script, and inside of the player controller script, run player death. Go ahead and save that. So make sure this is saved. I'm just hitting Control S or Command S if you're on a Mac. Basically, it's going to save both of those. So now, come on, give it a second. And if I play, you're going to see, if I go off, boop, it restarts me every time right where I was. Pretty cool. Okay? So that works pretty good. That's totally working. And to some degree, if you want to make your game that you never die, you can totally just do it like that. But I would like to make it so that you can lose. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep track of the number of times that we die. And then using that will determine whether you either get reset or whether you just say the game's done. Okay? So let's go up here. What we'll do is we'll just add another variable. I'm just going to put it right up here with these ones, because we'll just put the number we want. So we'll do public, and we're going to do an int. This is going to be a number, but it's going to be a whole number, right? Because you can't have a half a life. I mean, I guess you could. I feel like I have a half-life. You know, you either have 1 life, 2 life, 3 lives, or 9 lives if you're a mangy cat. Anyway, so we're going to do public int, and then we're just going to do player lives total. And then let's just initially set it to 3. That way we don't have to code it later on. But if we want to change this number later on, I made it public, so I'll be able to adjust it in here. I could also just make it private, but it's up to you. Anyways, I'm just going to make it public. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is when this player death gets played, what we're going to do is this. Let's go up here. We're going to get to this in a second. So first what I want to do is when the player death function gets called, I want to take away one of these lives. So we're going to do player lives total. Now you can do this a couple different ways. I could do equals, and then it would be player lives total minus 1. So I take whatever it currently is and then subtract 1 from it. There's another thing called decrement, and it just means if I do minus minus, that means it will take away 1. It's just like a little cheat thing, okay? So what does it say? Okay, take away 1 of the lives. So when this runs, first thing it's going to do is going to take 1 of the lives away. Then what we're going to do is we're going to test the number of lives there are. So we'll say if player lives total is greater than 0, then do the brackets. I want you to run what's in here. In that case, it's going to be this. I want to run that. So basically, if I have more than no lives, so meaning I have some lives, then go ahead and reset my position. Else, oops, like that. Else, we want to lose. Now, we could do any number of things here, and this actually isn't going to work right now, but I'm just going to set this up, and then if you were to build the game and play it, this would work. We're just going to write application.quit. We're going to set something else better up later on for this. Oh, sorry, parentheses. Okay. What this is going to do is basically, if the game is built, meaning like we're not playing it in the Unity editor, if we actually build the game, when you would die after the last death, it literally will just shut the game down. Like it'll just close out. Which isn't really the best way of doing it, but for now it's fine. This will still work, but what will happen is that when we run out of lives, just nothing will happen because it can't quit the game because it's inside of this engine here. Okay, so let's try it out. because there's other things we need to do too, which we're not going to do here, but we need to have like a life counter so you know how many lives you have to begin with. So we'll try playing it. We should be able to do it 3 times, and then the 4th time, that'll be it. So I'm just going to go ahead and go down. Good. There's 1, 2, 3. Oh, maybe I need to give you... Oh, you know why? Because I take away a life the first time. So, if lives is greater than 0. So, because we take away the life before we do that, and that's not really very helpful. So, it might actually need a higher number than what we put there. But anyway, still worked. Okay. So, yay. All right, so I'm going to call that good. But we could tie any number of things to this. So, for instance, I could have like a UI element that pops up and says, you know, you died when this last thing happens. But basically, I would just put whatever I want to happen when the game is over. It's going to go where this application.quit is. But for now, I'm just going to put that in there because we'd have to build a whole thing. Okay, so we'll call that good for the player death. Next, what we'll do is the player life, or not life, but the victory condition. It's going to be an exciting game. All right, so see you in the next one.